I just think, just like the amazing variety we have in our lives and in our world, we can do that. We can pick and choose what we want to do and who we want to do it with. And that is one of the benefits of getting older, is I think we get better at realizing, oh, well, this gives me energy. I'm going to do more of this. Or this really sucks my energy. I can't do this anymore. And that is one thing about getting older that I think is really powerful, is awareness. You have to be paying attention, not only to your body, which is crucial, but also what works for you, what makes you feel good, what doesn't. And if it doesn't, move.
And that is Mary Westheimer, someone who has a very positive yet realistic view on aging. In this episode, we hear all about what's shocking and funny about aging, but more importantly, how you can move through it with a mindset that actually helps. This is also the first episode of the series, Aging According to Everyone Else. Welcome to Mind Blend. I'm your host, Karen Chong. In each episode, I talk with people who've experienced something real, and we break down what made the difference, so you can see yourself and the world around you more clearly, spot what you might have been missing, and move through life with a clearer way forward. If you like what you're hearing, share with those around you and subscribe to Mind Blend. You will help a lot in spreading the insights for anyone who can use them. Let's blend. So joining me today is Mary Westheimer, author of What Nobody Tells You About Getting Older, Aging with Both Eyes Open and a Smile on Your Lips. Mary has spent years collecting the kinds of observations about aging that most of us quietly notice but rarely talk about out loud. From strange little changes in our bodies to the surprising emotional moments that seem to sneak up on us. Mary approaches aging with honesty, curiosity, and a healthy dose of humor, and I can attest to that. So we're going to understand what's happening and share some interesting facts about Mary today. Hi, Mary. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Mind Blend.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for having me.
So I noticed the way you describe yourself, at least on your Instagram, is you're currently an old person, but you have a very healthy and positive attitude about that. I am guessing that you haven't always been like that, right?
Well, actually, I probably have. I think I'm a pretty positive person because the alternative is not really very attractive or fun. And so I do a lot of work about that, and I've learned a lot over the years. But so hopefully I've gotten better at it. But I do think that it's important that, as you have said, that we have the right mindset, because we have no other choice. Well, we do, but we don't want to do that. And so let's have fun. We might as well enjoy it. And that's kind of how I've approached life in general.
Yeah, that's a great attitude because you cannot control it. It's going to happen.
Well, the only thing we can control is the way we respond.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you know that, then you stop trying to control what's happening and start trying to figure out, well, how do I work with this? How do I make this work for me? So it is a mindset, definitely.
And do you remember, was it a moment that sparked, oh, I want to write a book about this?
Because I'm a list maker. And so I have a lot of lists. And one of them was, why didn't anybody tell me this about aging? And so about 4 or 5 years in, I realized I have more than 40 of these things. And some were funny. Most of them were observations from my own life. And that's when I said, I think I could write a book. And so then I began getting serious and doing my research, because there were some things that weren't in there that are really critical about aging. But I never really planned to write a book. I have written one other book, was a work for hire, and I was a professional writer for many years. But this was a little bit of a surprise. In fact, somebody said to me, how does it feel being an author? And I had to think about it, and I said, oh, I guess I am an author.
Yeah.
But I really have always seen this as a way to share information, and that's been my goal. So I didn't plan to write a book.
But it's interesting that you're putting lists of the things that you're noticing. Do you remember what were the initial ones and how they were surprising to you?
Um, well, it came over the years, and I think that they arrived. Some of them are funny. The original ones are all pretty funny, but they were things that I would discover. One of my favorites is Sing, 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 which I wrote about my grandparents because I noticed that they did this and that guess what? Now I do this. And most people I know, which is I hear a song and I think, oh my gosh. And then I start singing the song because I remember it and it relates to what's going on. And when they did it, I thought, oh my gosh, these poor old people. And now I do it because that's the fabric of our lives. That's how we grew up and what we heard. So that was an early favorite. But I will say that the most shocking part of all that happened after the book was actually all written, had been all laid out, and it suddenly struck me like a thunderbolt that I bet my mother tried to tell me some of these things.
Oh,
I didn't listen because, for one thing, she was my mom. What could she know, right? And so I said, we have to get in a couple of paragraphs here because I think she tried to tell me. And I think when we're younger, we think we know everything. So that
yeah.
was probably the most shocking thing
Mm,
that I did. But I just jot down the list. I keep it on my phone, and so I had it with me all the time. And
hmm
the most fun were the good things that I know.
hmm So when you have come to terms with it and you decided to do something positive about it, what did you have to shift anything? Did you have to adjust anything mentally?
That is a great question. I don't think so, only because I thought about it so much, and it be so much part of my life jotting these things down. Although it was just they would come in waves. Um, I think I didn't really have to shift as much on that as on the need to just be positive and realize that the only thing I can do is respond, is control my response. And that was definitely a mind shift because I think humans have a tendency to want to control things. And guess what? We can't. So that's an awakening, something to accept. So that was probably the bigger shift, uh, is accepting that and then saying, now, how do I work with this?
You know, as you were saying, you didn't really have to change a whole lot. Like you were pretty positive even before deciding to write a book, before coming to terms with it. So it's a blessing, I think, because I have had people in my family, they really had a difficult time accepting they're entering a different stage. They would get really angry when they couldn't do the things that they used to be able to do. And let's dig into some of those. So, you mentioned in the book a few things that maybe more and more of us are noticing aren't as easy anymore. A very obvious one is our physical ability. And there are friends around me, they will, like, they're a different age. And I guess they look young. And whenever I say something about, yeah, you don't look that age, and then they would say, oh, tell that to my knees or tell that to my back. So getting hurt is one of the things that you talked about. I got some questions from listeners when they know that I'm doing this episode. One person asked, how do you get over the hump of I'm always hurting? Things don't heal as fast. Why am I in pain? And it's a real downer when you're always getting hurt.
It totally is because we're not in control. Once again, I think it's a control thing. But I think the answer, Karen, is that uh, we have to move and we have to stretch and we have to do all these things. And I do address that in the book that I now exercise more than ever before. In fact, when I was young, I never did because I didn't have to. But now what I find is that so many parts of my body, unless I stretch every day, which I do, I hurt. So that becomes an important part of my life. And I think everybody who's aging will find that. that the more you move and the more you stretch and uh, just take care of your body in ways you didn't have to before, the less you hurt. And I can tell, and yet I still have to talk myself into it. Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, I don't need to do this today. I did it yesterday. I'll do it tomorrow. And then I talk to myself. A lot of self-talk of, Mary, you need to do this. And then when I'm done, I realize, oh, I'm so glad I did that. But it is a daily convincing of myself to do these things, specifically the physical, moving and just taking care of my body in ways I never had to do before. So I think that's the answer, but I don't like it either.
Mm. Do you have anyone around you who is sort of resistant to taking better care of themselves by being more physical?
Like a husband. Um,
Or anyone,
so
anonymous.
my husband, who's actually a little younger than I am, uh, he did struggle, as did I, but he struggled early on because he has a very physical job. He's a sculptor and he lifts heavy things. And he would say, well, I don't need to do that because I'm very physical in my work. And I'd say it's not the same thing. And eventually I learned, don't pressure him. And then eventually he caught on and he realized how much better he felt. And so he now works out and does physical things, goes on walks with me and things which he never had to do before. So, but in general, I think I do surround myself with positive people and people I want to be like.
Mm.
And we support each other in whatever it is we're trying to do. And that includes being honest sometimes. So, but I think the mind and the body have to go hand in hand.
Hmm. Yeah. The reason I asked that is I wanted to see what's your magic or your secret superpower to encourage the ones around you because you do lead by example.
Oh, what a great question. I just think pressuring people does not work.
Mm, 100%.
However, as you said, leading by example and maybe a timely reminder.
Hmm.
Somebody says, oh, I hurt so much. So, well, what are you doing about, physical activity? Or I use the Socratic method a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No.
Socratic method is simple, brilliant, and really works, which is you ask questions. And when you ask people questions, they answer, they come up with the answer themselves, and that empowers them. So if I say, gee, what are you doing as far as physical activity? That allows them to think about it themselves and say, well, not much, or, I work out once a week, or whatever it is. And that's really, really empowering for people to have the answer themselves. But pressure doesn't work. Ridicule definitely doesn't work, at least not in my world. Not if you're in a long-term relationship of any kind. If it's someone you want to be friends with tomorrow, but gentle reminders and the Socratic method really do work.
Yeah, that sounds like a great method. I definitely know no matter what age, forcing ridicule doesn't work. Even when you're a kid, you're forbidden to eat whatever. And when the parents are not here, you just go crazy on it. So we know that don't work. Since you talked about surrounding yourself with people, I know you did talk about tricks in what kind of friends you surround yourself with. Now, there's two groups that you do try to make friends with, and I want to understand what's the benefit of having friends who are like older or your age group or younger? Because I know, I think there'll be some secret that people don't know.
I love older people. Now that I am one, it's sort of weird, but
Mm,
I really do like older people. And I have a couple of women in my life who are in their 90s. And I love how they approach life, which is very straightforward. And they don't beat around the bush and they don't paint things more beautifully than they are. They're really honest without being unkind. So I think it is important to have older people for me in my life to help remind me of the bigger arc of what we approach in our world. But I've also learned that I need younger people in my life because they think differently. But I do know that the younger people in my life uh, help me realize, oh, there's a different way to look at this. And sometimes I do ask them questions. And in the book, I refer to why people buy ripped jeans, which I just don't get it. But I do ask them because I want to understand why that's of interest to them and how it makes them feel. And it may or may not change my opinion, but it helps me understand better. So I think it's a good balance to have both in my life. And just having other people helps me see things in such a different way. I'm in a book club, which I love because we really talk about books, and I'm a book person. So, and every time we discuss a book, I see something I had never seen in a way I had never seen it. And it's just because their experience is different. And I think this is true of both older people and younger people. And so I like to have all kinds of different types of people, ages, backgrounds, everything, because I learn so much.
Like when you mentioned, I love old people. I know someone who has said that too, and I understand why. Because there are people who are more senior and they are angry and they are mean and they are unkind to anyone younger. But there are other people who genuinely want to share their experience. Like they lived in a different world before, so they've seen it before. So they have an idea of how to handle a situation. Whereas many of us are just experiencing pandemic for the first time in our lives, and we are like experiencing the first like technology revolution that's getting rid of people. Sort of like when the assembly line when the assembly line came about. So we can definitely draw a lot of knowledge from older generations who have seen more than us. And also, I like that you point out you can learn a lot from young generations too, because I have a sister. She's 11 years younger than me. Just by talking to her, I now know what this word means. Or like, I now know why people put this word in here. It doesn't make grammatical sense, but I find myself using it now too. So I feel like that's a great way to stay in touch. Like in the book, you at least understand what memes mean.
I remember when that word first came around because what is that? And then the wonderful thing that we have, the advantage we have in this era is the ability to look things up. It's so easy.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
have to go to the library, but now I can just turn to the web and search and find out information. And one of those things that younger people talk about that I find myself looking up, honestly, is acronyms. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So what does that mean? So that really helps me too. That's a huge advantage that we have today. And now we do have to sort a little bit more than we used to, but still that instant information is so powerful.
Yeah, and there's no excuse to be ignorant anymore. Now there's this understanding the source of information and verifying that too, but that's separate topic. But yeah, like there's no excuse to just not take advantage of what we have at our fingertips and just like staying relevant, like you talk about in your book. And I know you do, like you make friends with younger people, try to stay relevant. And have you ever felt like the society seems to make older generations feel like they're irrelevant?
They try, but I think, the beautiful thing is we can pick and choose. And so if I'm with someone who's negative or, talking down about things we'll even say about the internet, um, they're not my people, Karen. And so
Mhm.
sometimes I just have to say, and you never want to hear this from me, if I say best of luck, I really, really mean it, but I'm not going to be in your life because you have an approach to life that brings me down or, I don't find productive. And so that's okay. Someone else will find that helpful and useful. But I just turn away from that and I turn towards something that I find helpful, productive, interesting, and funny. Funny really wins out for me. But not everybody feels that way. So we're not all for each other, you know? We
Hmm.
need to be able to pick and choose what works best for us. So sometimes that works better than others. If it's a family member, that's kind of a tough
Hmm.
stance to take. But even then, I just find, well, so great to see you. Thanks so much. Best of luck. I
Hmm.
don't say it's relatives, but I just think, just like the amazing variety we have in our lives and in our world, we can do that. We can pick and choose what we want to do and who we want to do it with. And that is one of the benefits of getting older is I think we get better at realizing, oh, well, this gives me energy. I'm going to do more of this. Or this really sucks my energy. I can't do this anymore. And that is one thing about getting older that I think is really powerful is awareness. You have to be paying attention, uh, not only to your body, which is crucial, but also what works for you, what makes you feel good, and what doesn't. And if it doesn't, move in a different
Yeah.
direction.
Like, why do it?
Right, right.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be able to say that. And I do think maybe something that would take us to up to our mid 20s to have the courage to say it. Now people have the courage to say it even when they're younger. And just like, no, I don't feel like hanging out tonight. I'm just gonna stay home and watch movies. I don't think it's a faux pas to say that when you're invited to a party now.
Yeah.
So I do think times change and maybe for the better. And it changes so that it works for the people living in it, I
Hmm.
think.
But honesty is required and
Honesty.
awareness. Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
don't have to be unkind, to be honest.
Mm, yeah.
Ironically, what you're saying makes me realize very young people, like under 10 or whatever, they're usually pretty good about being honest.
Yeah.
And they get it kind of rubbed out of them after a while because they might get reprimanded for being too honest. I can remember my mother saying to me, I don't know what I said to whom, but I remember my mother saying to me once, Mary, if you don't like Aunt Harriet's hat, you don't have to say, I don't like it. You can just say, Aunt Harriet, it's stunning. And that way you're not lying, but you're also not making her feel bad. So a lot of times it's just a matter of how we respond, and we don't have to lie. And I think, again, we get better at that. But kids are pretty good at being honest. So, and I think older people are, and they do pick and choose. And I realized it is not dependent on how you live, your amount of wealth, how much money you have, where you live. I know people who are of very modest means, they still do what they want. And you
Mm.
have to recognize, though, what that is. If you're doing something and it's making you miserable, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Just like how people just get angry at the world.
Yeah.
They're not helping themselves. They are making people want to drive them out of society even faster. Like by serving as a bad example of what more wiser senior generations are. Like they're actively making people want to treat them as invisible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Hmm.
good point. And one of those things is talking about your health all the time. And this is something that older people do. My parents used to call it the organ recital. And, and, I really don't have a lot of patience for that because guess what? We all are hurting. We all are dealing with health problems. But do we also have to talk about it all the time? I don't think it helps. I really don't. Unless they might have information that would help us. That's different. Somebody who's been through the same thing. But if all you're going to do is sit around and talk about your health,
Hmm.
I'm not interested. It doesn't help.
Hmm.
So that is something that we do have to watch as we get older is that organ recital.
Yeah. I do have family members. Every time we talk, now this is not very frequent, but every time we are on the phone, they are talking about their pains. What do you think that's doing to them?
Makes
Like,
them feel worse.
yeah,
Yeah.
and makes us worry. And but we cannot do anything because they are the ones who need to go seek help. But it also doesn't help them with healing. Now you just made me realize.
Yeah. It makes them feel older and more
Mm,
miserable. And talking about aging all the time makes you feel older.
mm,
So yeah, that's a tough one. That is a tough.
mm, yeah. But if people are prepared, like if they have read your book before turning a certain age, it may help them like ease in to the next phase of their life.
Yeah.
So another thing that you talked about in your book is taking care of your body. And you mentioned the physical working out. What about the outside, the appearance?
Oh, that is a very good question. And uh, I do a lot of things for my body. I have a physical trainer. I have a
Mm,
massage therapist. Um, I go to yoga, and I said weight training, and all these people help my body. Yet one of them said to me something interesting. She said, Mary, a lot of people I know spend a tremendous amount of money on plastic surgery and having their hair colored and their nails done. She said, you spend all your money on massages and yoga. And I thought, oh, that's very true. I probably don't spend any less than they do, but I apply it differently. And maybe that's because I'm not as concerned about my outward appearance. And honestly, Karen, it probably would have been better for my career if I were more concerned about my physical appearance. But oh well. I'm okay with focusing on some of it is inner. But I'm totally in favor of anybody who wants to do anything that makes them feel better, whether it's plastic surgery, whether it's having their nails done. All those things are fantastic. We just have to know which of those things are for us.
mm.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but I hope so.
Yeah, you did. And because there's a difference between staying young and like maintaining and chasing youth. Like
Mhm.
there are people who definitely try to wear things that they wore. They probably bought it at Forever 21 thinking that they're Forever 21. So we definitely have people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but that's not really because for me, I don't really think dressing your age is 100% the right approach because
Mhm.
your outfit makes a whole lot of difference. It can make you look 10 years older or 10 years younger. And if you can choose wisely, it can actually help you appear younger, which may help you feel better.
Yes, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes back to awareness. How does it make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Are you dressing up because you think you're supposed to? Or are you dressing up because it makes you feel good? Or maybe it matches your goals and your career goals too. And, when I was in a more traditional kind of business, I did dress up. I had heels and all that stuff. I did all those things. But now I don't have to, and I don't because I'm more comfortable wearing shorts. And, I still work in the studio. And the the sculptor that I work for is my husband.
Mm.
And I go in once a week and I weld and I grind and I get really, really dirty and I love it. So obviously, there I'm not dressed in heels.
Yeah.
but,
Don't.
but I love the feeling that it gives me of accomplishment. And because so much of what I do is you can't touch it, you can't hear it, you can't, So doing something physical is great for me. And I like the uniform,
Mm.
which is old jeans. And so,
Oh, I may have an answer about the ripped jeans thing. Like,
oh,
may not be an answer, but I can tell you my point of view.
okay.
If you try to do it yourself, so you have a perfect like fine pair of jeans, no rips, no nothing. If you try to cut it yourself, unless you are very talented in fashion, it will just look like you did it yourself, or it looks like you were caught it in tree. So the way they do it, they like the only the top layer is ripped, but the under like the bottom layer is not.
Huh.
So that may be the reason. And I choose the rips very selectively though. They don't all look good.
But
Some
I think
do.
you're right. If you try to do it
Mhm.
yourself, it's
Yeah.
not the same.
Hmm.
Someone else told me, he said, I do it because I like the fit of the jeans
Hmm.
that I'm picking.
Yeah.
So, but I think coming from a world where you want things to last a long time, it just seems counter. It's already ripped. But, most jeans are run through chemicals and stones to look soft and a lighter blue. So it's very difficult to buy jeans that are not pre
Hmm.
war.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
So,
that's interesting. Oh, I hope I didn't insult you by bringing
oh.
up that topic. Okay.
No, 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 not at all. I'm curious. What is something because the all your approach to things is different from what I think someone who's more senior would think. So, for example, when you see comments made by younger people, you are very kind and you just walk away instead of getting angry and telling them this is wrong. So, your mindset is very positive. Are there anything right now that younger generations, it can be millennials, it can be Gen Z, it can be Gen Alpha, just younger, are there any things that they're doing that like it's makes you frown and curious, but because of your positive mindset, you don't say anything? Are there anything like that? What are some examples of those?
Well, and I will talk a little bit about positive mindset because there's one thing that helped me tremendously. But I do see something that it kind of concerns me, but I have no control or no, and that is I see a lot of people in younger generations um, spending all of their money. They're not saving. They're going out to dinner, they're buying fancy clothes and cars, things they cannot really afford. That does concern me, but I have no control. I don't have children, so I can't really uh, say anything to them. And I observe it and it concerns me, but I have no way to influence that. But one of the ways that I keep a positive mindset, and I learned this from a man named Christopher Doris, who has a little not a podcast, a little email that he sends out every day, and I get a tremendous amount of wonderful information. And he talks about the O line, and that's the what he calls the objective line. And he says, okay, there are positive approaches and there are negative approaches. And in the middle is objectivity. And he said, so if you just cut off everything below the O line and just take a positive view of everything, it's amazing how powerful it is. And you very seldom have to say anything negative. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm perfect at it because there are times when I just want to bang my head on the uh, on the desk, like, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? But usually I can find something positive to say or think about what's going on. And I think that that tends to elevate all of my thinking in general toward positivity. Because negativity, you can make a point about something, but you don't have to be negative.
Hmm.
You can do it in a positive way. And pursuing that approach really helps me be more creative in how to
Hmm.
say and how to say it. It's been tremendously helpful to me. So I think it's worth knowing. I've learned a lot from him.
Now, how do you distinguish negativity and criticism? Are criticisms always negative to you?
Wow. Well, that is a really great question. Um, I think it goes back to what my mother said about Aunt Harriet's hat.
Mm.
I don't have to say, no, Aunt Harriet, I really think that's a hideous hat. So instead, what she said to me, once again, my mother was right. What she said was, say it in a way that is more positive. And you don't have to lie. I really believe in being honest. But you can say, that is an amazing hat. And you're not lying. Now, if you say that's interesting, they'll catch on because interesting is an obvious way of avoiding something negative. But you can probably say something like, I have never seen a hat like that before. And usually they'll just take it as a compliment. Well, thank you. And you go from there. So I think it's sort of a little bit in the realm of creativity is how can I not be negative, but still be honest? So,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not going to make it sound like I'm perfect. There are times when I just struggle like everybody else. But I do think having a positive perspective is tremendously helpful in navigating life.
Yeah. And I think you give older generation a better reputation because we like old and cranky always seem to be like mentioned together. Like if you're old, you must be cranky. So, and you prove that it's not true because we always think, like, if I think about why younger people seem to have this constant tension with older people, it's because they criticize them. The older people criticize them. Like, why are you playing video game all day? Why are you always on your phone? And
But it's presentation because if you say, help me understand why are you doing video games all day? I want to understand, as opposed to what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I think sometimes there's a good reason and we really don't know what it is. But if you open with a critical salvo, you're never going to hear the reason. You're just going to hear them defend it.
yeah.
Well, I think part of that is being open-minded to maybe there's something here I don't understand.
Hmm.
So,
Being open minded, that's how you kind of get on with times too, I think. Because otherwise, you will never, you'll refuse to get into a car that doesn't have a driver.
that's a big issue where I live because we have Waymo here, and I've had Waymo
Mm.
here for years. And we're the largest contiguous area of autonomous driving cars. So people here are pretty used to seeing them. But my husband did put a post on social media of his first trip in a Waymo. And most of the comments were, I would never do that.
Mm.
And I thought, isn't that fascinating? Because we hadn't thought to be scared. And yet there have been things that have happened that we probably could. So, but we still use it because there's some advantages, and again, it's parsing what is worthwhile and what isn't.
Mhm.
And that's something you do better as you get older if you're paying attention.
Yeah, if you're paying attention, because humans are not necessarily better than machines when it comes to driving. When it comes to the judgment, now that the technology is still being developed, like, I don't know if you remember, it was one of the Will Smith movies, and I don't think it's Men in Black, but it's some other futuristic movie, and all the cars are like self-driving cars, and they like zipping through the freeways really quickly, and it's almost like you don't want human to be driving because the machines don't drive the way they should, and you actually can minimize accidents unless you do something you're not supposed to. Then that's how you cause the accident.
Well, we've had some very interesting situations here where autonomous cars did things that they probably shouldn't have done.
Mm.
One of them got stuck on the light rail tracks, and they had to get it off the tracks before it got hit by a train. But
Mm.
I think the incidence of mistakes, and as I said, we've had some exciting moments, but so far we've survived.
Yeah.
And there are times when it's just really the best choice. My husband had surgery on his neck and he couldn't drive.
Wow.
Well, he'd go down to the studio. He could still work. He would go to the studio in a Waymo. And
Mm.
otherwise, I would have had to drive him down there and then come pick him up. And so there are moments when it really is the best choice. So, but they're not perfect, just like us.
Not yet. They
Yeah.
hopefully will get better and better. I read a book like a while ago, and it talked about how all these things that we are starting to use as consumers, they've been in development for 50 years. So it took a long time. We just don't see it. So I am like very impressed by your outlook and how you view life and your attitude. And I want to ask you to tell our listeners, what's the biggest misperception about quote unquote old people that you want them to kind of unlearn?
What a great question. That we're obsolete,
Mm.
that we have nothing to offer. When the truth is that older people have a tremendous amount to offer. But I do think that sometimes younger people, they don't even listen because they figure, well, what does she know? Like me and my mom, right? But what does she know? Because she lived in a different time, and I guess I've never felt that way. I think in the book I mentioned my grandfather, who lived to be 101, and I don't know anybody who accepted change better than my grandfather. He was quite amazing about that. And so I wanted to know, well, how did he do that? And I wanted to know what he had learned and so I think I've always had that acceptance and appreciation of older people. So I think younger people sometimes just write us off without even bothering to listen. And
Mhm.
honestly, they're lost, but that's their choice. But I think they could learn a lot. It's not all going to apply. There's so many things that happen that really don't have any bearing anymore. Like, one of the ones I think about is it used to be that you would think about when you called somebody long distance because of the time you would pay more or less. It doesn't matter anymore. You can call them anytime you want and probably not costing you anything because you're doing it on a mobile phone. So there are things that are no longer valid, but the basic things really are valid. And
Mm.
those are, how we treat each other
Yeah.
and how we treat ourselves. So those things I think are things we can learn from older people. They've had a lot of experience.
Yeah. And what about people who are starting to feel the aging effect? And I'm sure it's a struggle for many. They start like blaming themselves or feeling like, oh, it's downhill from here. What would be some of your advice?
Yes, and there are people like that, and they're depressed actually because they're assigning mm, negativity to what's happening to them. And I think the best thing you can do is say, what's the gift in this for me? What what can I learn from this? How can I adjust? Because I certain things, I'm sorry, they're not going to get better. One like shocking one for me was I can't grip things like I used to. I don't have a strong grip like I used to. Well, if that's important to me, there are exercises I can do to work on my grip. But there are some things I think one that has really been a shock to me is I used to think that, and there is some truth that as we get older, we just do the things we want to do. I think that's a good thing. But what I didn't realize is we also don't have the energy that we used to have. That was a shock that we can't do things not because we don't want to, but because we can't. And that has been kind of a shock. But what do you do about it? Well, you figure out, well, how do I get more energy? Do I maybe need to take a nap in the afternoon and not feel bad about it?
Mm.
For me, and I know this is sort of a buzzword and everybody's tired of hearing about it, I wasn't getting enough protein and my body was
Mm.
run down. And now I force myself to eat more protein in various ways and intake more protein and have seen dramatic results. I was eating less meat. I was less interested in it. And I didn't realize that I was really cutting myself off from my power source. So you can complain or you can look for solutions. But complaining, as far as I can tell, Karen, has done absolutely no good.
Yeah.
There's certain things I don't believe in. I don't believe in guilt,
Mm.
shame, or worry. I have yet to find any good in them. They don't really work for me. And so I can go into more detail about each of them and why, but The truth is, I try to spend my energy, of which I now have less, on the things that are important to me and the things that give me joy and make me happy.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out, well, you don't have energy. Like, there's a problem. Find a solution.
Right.
Like, you started doing more exercise, having more protein. You put it very, very nicely. Guilt, worry, and shame don't do anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, you can manage risks. Like, instead of worrying, I suggest the people around me who are worried all the time, like, assume they will happen. What are you going to do in scenario A and B and C? Then, if they don't happen, fine. If they do, you already have a plan.
I like that. That's a really good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, I do use an example of my previous husband who died in 1991. My father had pointed out to me, he was quite a bit older than I am. And my father said, Mary, do you realize that you are going to be taking care of an old man? Well, quite honestly, I hadn't even thought about it. And then I started to think about it. He died when he was 52, Karen. He never got to be an old man. So if I had worried about that, what a waste.
Yeah.
Energy, and it would have helped nobody. So I just think we have to keep coming back to awareness and an understanding of, well, if I care about this, what can I do about it? And if the answer is nothing except it, that's something. So it kind of does come back to where our priorities are and what is important to us.
And that's something that's applicable no matter what age you are.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the
All
more you
right.
practice it, the better you get at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for this last part, I want to play something fun. Just some quick questions, quick answers.
Okay.
What's your least favorite thing that old people tend to always say besides the health thing?
Oh, besides the recital, you look so young. I don't hear that much anymore, but I used to hear it a lot. You look so young. It used to make me bad.
But not anymore, right?
Not anymore. I don't hear it anymore. I'm very short and small. I think that's why I used to hear it so much, but not anymore.
Right. What's something that used to annoy you, but now you laugh at?
I guess physical clumsiness or falling down, which I used to be embarrassed, and now I just laugh too.
Mm. If there is something that the younger generation is doing that you actually embrace, what is it?
Probably technology.
Yeah, how comfortable they are.
Yes, yeah, and unquestioning. And maybe that's not always so good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, older people, just say, I'm just not interested in technology. And I am interested because I know it can do things for me. So that's an easy one for me to answer.
Yeah. Like it makes a lot of difference. My mom is also she has been pretty savvy. And even if she stumbles in the beginning, I guess that's partly me. Like I teach her how to fish instead of fishing for her. So she's capable of doing things that surprises me.
Nice.
Okay. What's your favorite song?
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's called Think, and it's by James Brown. And you might not, you know who James Brown even is?
If that's the original James Brown, then I do.
Original James Brown. And there's this
Mhm.
wonderful song it's called Think. And it's sort of funny, but also very true about what we value and how we value it. So,
That's another technology advancement. We
yeah,
can search any songs,
at any
like
moment. And
lyrics at your fingertips.
lyrics at your fingertips, and
Mhm.
also just the ability to know a little bit about something and still track it down.
Even if you don't know, if you can just describe it, you
Right.
can. Yeah.
The hardest thing is spelling. So if you don't know how to spell a word, how do you look it up?
You can, well, that depends on how close you are to be able to spell something that sounds like that.
Well, and the other thing is I'll turn to thesaurus and I'll
Yeah.
look for a word that's similar, and usually I
Yeah.
track that.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. For your book, What Nobody Tells You About Getting Older, who's or how old is the youngest person who has read it?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I know that answer, but my very first book signing, I had everybody wear a name tag, and on it they were supposed to put how old they felt. And the person who felt the oldest said 112. Person who felt the youngest said 12.
Ah,
So I don't know, actually. The book is really selling well. And what surprised me, this is not a quick answer, but what surprised me is that the people who seem to appreciate it the most are from about 35 to 45 or 50, and then 80 and up. And the people in the middle, who I would have thought would be very interested, I don't know if they're in denial mostly, but most of them are not as interested as the younger people who are starting to see these changes in their body, and they're just perplexed about what's going on. And then the older people are saying, told ya. Yes.
yeah.
So they love it. They laugh like crazy.
Yeah, I did too. Highly recommend this book. I'm going to leave information about Mary and the book in the show notes because I really enjoyed reading it. I actually laughed out loud, and I don't do that very often.
Oh, good.
Like something that I read in the book, you said something about laughter, and I was like, even when I was little, I haven't been very goofy. So compared to my sisters, definitely not goofy. Tend to be on the serious side, so I don't laugh that often. I do a lot now. Like I do it a lot more than when I was a teenager or
Oh, that's
whatnot.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will do that more. Well, thank you very, very much for sharing your experience and your stories with us, Mary. I really, really enjoyed the conversation, the insights, the wisdom. And you have, like, this talking to you, if anyone thinks old people are just old, like, what do you know? This is gonna change. Like, Mary is a good example of how not all of them are like this. And maybe not even that big of a proportion. I don't know, like based on the number of people around me. Yeah. Thank you very much for talking to me today and being on the show, Mary.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind One. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to follow and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn or leave me a comment. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and let's continue to blend our minds and discover what's possible.